Can you actually 3D print model generated with AI? Probably not. Most likely you'll need to clean it up, polish it a bit, and if your printer's bed is small, you might need to split it into the parts cleanly to assemble it later. Well guys, after a huge amount of tests of AI tools and different approaches, I developed my own best and fastest workflow, and you can easily pick it up for yourself. So in this video I'm gonna show you my fastest AI workflow for 3D printing, how to easily prepare and polish them, clean a way to split them into the parts for later assembly, and do 3D printing and painting without any headache. Gear up with snacks, we are getting started. Steph here, and we're gonna create me. So if you don't know, I'm a big fan of JoJo, and we're gonna create this figure me as a JoJo. I don't even know why I didn't create it before. So the tricky thing is that my printing bed is not really that big, but I want to create it big enough, and there will be a 6cm light on the bottom, so I can plug it and it will be nicely lighted from the bottom and look extremely cool. So how do we do that? I got the reference that I like, but there are a few things that are wrong here. There is a wrong base. I obviously cannot put legs right on the light. It will not plug. And I actually decided that I'm gonna separate head and base, and then all parts gonna fit. It's very important to decide it up front. That will help you to generate them right. And also what I did before I start to generate 3D model, I went to Gemini and adjusted a little bit the reference, like I removed the finger a little bit from the head, and I also removed the collar a little bit from neck, so I can separate head easily. With all that done, here's my final reference, pretty much the same but way easier to work with. And I also separated base. For the base I also redesigned it a bit, so legs will be placed on this center area, but the other part is still thick enough so it will be a solid construction and will also have space for the light. Now it's time to generate 3D model. For 3D printing, I really enjoy using High 3D, which is recently Hitem 3D. And the good thing about it is that they recently added 2.1 version and also reduced all the prices. It's now faster, better, well, everything that you actually might need. Especially I recommend it for the 3D printing. So for the settings, I'm gonna use version 2.1, gonna go with quality, gonna go with geometry plus texture. Why not? I'm gonna make it private. There are additional geometry settings here, but I don't need any of them right now. And for Hitem, by the way, you can try it absolutely for free. They do give up to 4 or 5 free generation. The link will be in the description. Now let me be honest about 3D AI generator choice. Hitem is not the only one option. There is also Hunyon that you can test for free, but they do differ for different purpose. For example, Hunyon is always tend to simplify things and maybe make it too stylish, and I see that a lot on different tests, but they do give free credits. Also, I don't really like how it follows proportions. The main reason I prefer Hitem is because of how sharp geometry is and how it follows proportions in all related things. And in general, for 3D printing, how it built up the shape is more suitable in my opinion and some other creators in my network. But this tutorial will work with any other generated model. It only depends on how much time you will need to process it until you're happy, but it will result in time you'll need to spend on processing it. So I generated the model, and here in Hitem, if you are not happy with the results, you can do the free retrace, which I recommend to always do, and just choose the best one. Why not? This is still generative AI and it does give different results. Okay, and when we have the model that we like ready, we can actually go and download it as FBX or HTML because we don't need texture for 3D printing. So here's the final model. And here I also generated the podium pretty much the same way. Okay, we're gonna download both models, and now let's drop them to Blender. And by the way, High 3D, they do have Blender plugin, which can be actually very fun. I did test it and it works quite well. You basically install the Blender plugin and you'll have the context menu like this. Here you're gonna need to top up on the credits. The API credits is different from what you see on Hitem, but here you pay only for usage. When it's connected, you can actually use item and generate it right from Blender, which can be actually very useful. And for texturing, you can select any object and do texturing right here. You can texture the model you generate with item, or you can texture any other model. So here's our model in Blender. And the first thing we're gonna need to do is go to sculpting mode right away and do some cleanup. And I really do not know any faster tool yet that helps to process and polish model as sculpting in Blender. It has all you need, and you don't really need to know all of these tools, you just need few of them. Let me give you a quick breakdown. So let me show you bare minimum in sculpting. That will give you a lot of options. So first of all, to go to sculpting, just go to this menu and choose sculpt mode. And here we're already in sculpt. So there are two main modes, is either you use brush, either you do masking or selection. There are plenty of other tools, I don't even know what they do. Let's start with brush. One of the main brush is smoothing that you can access from here, or even easier, just press shift and it will be already used smoothing. Also, you can right click anywhere and control the size of a brush and strength of a brush, which is very convenient. Another brush that might be useful is draw in clay. For example, clay is just to add some volume somewhere, and together with smooth brush it can help to add volume anywhere. And the cool thing is that any brush, almost any brush, with control actually do invert action. So holding control on the clay will actually do a hole, and with smooth we can actually make it smooth. Well, that's already very powerful. But when it comes to moving things and stuff, there are amazing thing called elastic grab, and definitely my favorite one. So you can actually move, drag objects around, and it can be also combined with mask. So what masking does is very simple. There is mask brush that you can actually mask the area by painting, or I prefer this button and here to select laser mask. Definitely a tool that I use in almost all of my tutorials. You can select an area just like that, and it will select everything from projection. So what I'm gonna try to do right now is to select the head, and I'm pretty successful with it. And I did not select the hands. Now I'm gonna go and select elastic grab, and now I can just actually move the hands more far from heads, just like that. It also helps to reposition some stuff, like if you're actually working with clay. How cool is that? That's fun and easy. On demand, you can learn some other brushes like crease sharp. Helps to add sharp stuff. You can always control strength by clicking right click and size of a brush. Now this is exactly what I do in Blender right now. So I go through the code and smoothen the areas that I don't like. There might be plenty of areas. I can add volume somewhere. I can check on the proportion with that elastic grab. I can do some makeup on the face, remove some unused lines on the hat. Also sometimes in sculpt mode I do add some volume in some places that I don't want to have holes. That can be done with inflate brush, right? It basically inflates two sides of an object and it helps to cap holes, right? Sometimes for 3D printing it's extremely useful. And one last important thing about sculpting that might be very useful is remesh. So remesh is like the way to recalculate mesh. Like here's the example. I was trying to smoothen like this area and it was not working because the mesh is not equally dense everywhere from AI generation. So what I go to remesh and I'm gonna choose value like will be something like 0.008 meter, and I'm gonna press remesh. That will basically recalculate it, and but be careful with the values here. It will recalculate the vertices, and now you can see the smooth works very well. Also extremely necessary when you bring two mesh together to do remesh before you will be able to use smooth, because it will recalculate two meshes as one based on one connected surface. And one more thing I want to show about masking is that you can separate or delete the masked area. So for example, I'm not happy with the part of a code for whatever reason, right? I can select it, and here in mask menu there's two extremely useful functions that I use all the time. Mask slice to fill holes, that will slice it and leave the nice cuts, which you can later smooth. Don't forget to clean the mask because masked area is not affected by any brush. Or you can actually slice it to new object and then that object reposition somewhere or clone or whatever. And guys, just using these 4 or 5 simple tools, I was able to clean up, polish my figure until I'm really happy with the result. Now using same tools and some primitives, we can actually split parts nicely. Let me show you how I do it in this case. So for this, we're gonna create a plane. So how to do that? Press Shift A and choose Mesh Plane. Okay, here's our plane, and I'm gonna position it somewhere in around the neck. I'm gonna use controls here. You can also use hotkeys, but it's relatively simple operation. Okay, we're gonna need to approximately place it somewhere here. Okay, now when it's done, let's go to modifiers and modifier called subdivision, and let's add a little bit subdivision. So basically convert it to the circle. But it's not only converts to a circle, it also adds polygons. And here's why we need it. We're gonna go in sculpt mode while plane is selected. And now in sculpt mode, of course, with my favorite grab brush, elastic grab, we're gonna position it so it actually sort of form the cut line, right? The reason that we do plane, because we know that plane will represent the cut. And this example is particularly cool because the cut will be not a straight line, right? With straight lines, it of course will be easier. You can actually use the plane alone. But here again, we will do it a little bit different. So it follows the curvature and specifics. And while I was doing that, I actually spot a problem here. So this part is connected. So I smooth it. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna paint it with mask. Yes. And we're gonna use that mask slice later. Okay. So let's first paint it. Now, holding Control is an inverse action, right? So it works for mask as well. So it will demask, right? Sort of like remove the mask. Okay. So now when this thing selected, we're gonna go to mask and mask slice to fill holes. Just like this, it will cut it and cap holes. Clear mask, and we just smooth the area. Okay, now this one is disconnected. All right. When we slice the neck, it will not be a problem and it will be separated properly. Okay, so now let's finalize the slicing plane, and we're gonna go to modifier, generate solidify. So solidify will sort of add a little bit volume, because when we are physically connected, there might be some glue or anything else or whatever. So it's pretty much good idea to keep it like 1-2 millimeter or a little bit less than millimeter base. And when we're happy, we can apply this modifier. Fine. And now it's time to actually make a cut. So how do we do that? We go to modifier again, and here we're gonna use Boolean. Very cool modifier. Now the idea is that this Boolean modifier will be on the main object, and with difference selected, we're gonna choose the plane object. Okay, we're gonna wait a little bit, and we're gonna see that there is a line. They're actually slice it. That's fine, and then we can press apply. I actually hit the plane. It's still there. Now we're gonna go to edit mode. We're gonna click anywhere on head and press Ctrl L on the keyboard. Ctrl L by default selects geometry that is connected, and since they are disconnected on the neckline, so the rest of the body is not connected, then we're gonna press P and press selection. That will separate selection into the separate object. Now we can go back to object mode. Okay, so now our head is nicely disconnected. Okay, that was pretty easy. But wait, it's not it, because we need a plug-like connection, right? How do we do that? It's easy. Shift A and let's create a cube. Okay, we're gonna scale the cube and let's position it somewhere where the head will be connected. Let's make it smaller and position somewhere here. Okay, now the one thing I will do is I'm gonna go to edit mode and I'm gonna select the bottom face, and with pressing S or just use the scale here, I'm gonna scale it a little bit so it's narrow on the bottom and it's bigger on the top. So now it looks like some plug. Right away I'm gonna press Shift D on the keyboard and duplicate it, and I'm gonna hide that object. We're gonna need it later to make a socket. Now you already might guess that we're gonna select head, go to Boolean, and here we're gonna choose union, right? Just to pretty much combine this plug with the head. And that's pretty much it. When we are happy with the result, just apply the Boolean modifier, right? Don't forget to apply. That will make it one object. Now we're gonna show our another cube, and here we're gonna select it all with A and just scale it a little bit. Why? Because again, when we're gonna plug them together in after printing, there might be glue or anything else, so we need some small extra space. And with Boolean we're gonna do the same thing, but we're gonna choose difference. That will remove the cube and form this socket. Very nice. And now if we take a look inside, we can see that there is small gap exactly as we need it. That will be place taken by glue. You can, of course, depending on the size of your model, make it bigger, smaller, and stuff. There is part too bad, you don't need it. Now it's time to use same approach to create a base and create a socket for the light. So the light is 6 centimeter or 60 millimeter, and there is also a wire. How do we do that? First, for the light, we're gonna choose to create cylinder, and here on the right we can open this panel, and here in item we can actually set the right dimension of the light. To set millimeters, you can go to scene, units, and choose the right units for everything. For example, you can change meters to millimeters and you'll see the same millimeters as me, or you can use meters if it's easier. Okay, so for my cylinder I'm gonna choose 6161 and 9 millimeter by 8 for now. Alright, now it's time to position it right, and also I guess I need to position base on top of my light, right? So you can choose it, you can select it. There is also X-ray mode for you if you want to see it more clearly, and luckily for me the shape is extremely perfect circle. Now what's not perfect is the bottom of the base, so I'm gonna go to edit modes. I'm gonna also create a cube and I'm gonna scale it down. With help of cube, actually it can be big, right? We're gonna need the cube top surface that will be sort of a delimiter for our base. So what I need to do is to make sure this cube top exactly fits the cylinder that represents our light. And now we can go to Boolean, and by this cube we're gonna cut it, right? So on our base we choose difference and choose the cube, right? And then we're gonna apply the modifier. Now we can delete the cube, and what we can see is like perfect slice on the bottom here. Super nice. Now we can enable cylinder, and we pretty much need to do the same. I'm gonna extend it a little bit to make sure it cut nicely, and I'm gonna do exactly the same operation, and you can see there was a problem. That's not a big deal. What we're gonna do is just to move it a little bit higher, okay, and cut again. Fine. All right, very nice. I guess the last part now is the hole for wire, and you can make it again with the cube, but to make it a little bit more rounded I'm gonna select two edges and press Ctrl B like this, and yeah, so just to make it more rounded from the top, and we're gonna cut it again like this. And of course we're gonna need to add the plug-in socket the same way we did for the head, but here we don't need to do a slice because the base is already disconnected. Is also another way to do not do slice, is just to generate them disconnected and connect later. And also with Boolean you can sort of like cut one part from another, or like remove the difference between parts, and that will be the same pretty much. Okay, so here I did pretty much the same thing, right? I make those things a little bit bigger and join it base with these plugs. And eventually guys, we do have everything ready for printing. Now this guy will be exported as STL. Each part will be exported separately, and let's start printing. But before we move on guys, let me remind you that I recently released my first 3D AI course, which is focused on game development, but I also cover a lot of useful things like this. My goal is to give you 10% of 3D skills, knowledge about best AI tools, and that will give you power to achieve 90% of any of your goals, ideas, develop character for game, create a really nice sculpt, or even create whole game level and more. For printing I use resin printer, and I was also experimenting a lot with the resin. I ended up that ABS like resin is giving like the best quality in terms of details. I actually also think to try a filament printer. Somehow I never really used it enough. Of course the first thing is to do supports, and I also learned a lot about the supports. Also guys, thanks to your comments under my last video about 3D printing, I do improve. Main thing for the supports is to not be placed on the most visible area such as face. With the supports done, we can actually run the printing. The printing takes around 3-4 hours for each part, and you can see right, it takes quite a lot of space on my printing bed. So yeah, I actually split it exactly as I had to, and it ended up extremely nice. I'm really happy with the resin. Okay, so similar way, printed like head and base. Then there is a curing process. Then you remove the supports. clean the excess resin, and we're gonna do UV curing. Afterwards, we need to sand and prepare the surface, and then it comes time for truly the longest and most difficult part. Definitely not the generation and model preparation. Trust me, it's painting. And we had some difficult time to figure it out. My girlfriend even took special lessons how to do painting with special airbrush to get these results. Also, painting takes some time because you have to put the base first, you have to wait to dry, and then you can add color layers. They will sit nicely, and this back and forth with tape so color are not mixed and you have nice sharp lines and stuff also takes some time. But the final result is amazing. This is by far nicest model that we ever created, and together with this light inside the base, it looks just amazing. Let me know in the comments how much you like it and how useful was this workflow. Note that on my channel there are more videos, and I do have dedicated tutorial about sculpting in Blender, how to use Blender for absolute beginners. Take a look on those videos. They will help you to get started and to get your amazing 3D prints live very soon. That was Steph. Like and subscribe, and see you in the next video.